I'm Chris Stott, and I came to Harwell in 1985 as rector of Harwell at Chiltern. Previously we had been in Africa and came back from Tanzania in November 1984, and then got a letter from someone who was involved in the appointment process, and ended up here in February 1985.
And had you been to Harwell before?
No, I hadn't. But actually, interestingly enough, I shared a study at school with a chap called David Mason, whose father at that time was rector of Harwell and Chiltern. I was born in Suffolk, and when I was one, my parents returned to China, where they had been missionaries before, and I lived there for 4 years, had my 5th birthday on the boat coming back. And then we moved to near Cheltenham in the Cotswolds, where my father was vicar of. When I was about 17, my father moved to Cambridge, so I moved with them, and by that time I was just coming to the end of my schooling and went to Tech College for a year, and then went to college in Bristol, where I did a degree in theology. And during my last year there, felt that God was calling me to be ordained, and so stayed on an extra year.
And where were you ordained?
I was actually ordained, fortunately for me, in Canterbury Cathedral by one Michael Ramsey, who was Archbishop. The reason I was ordained in Canterbury was because I was going to be curate in Croydon, Christchurch, West Croydon, which at that time, the Croydon sort of area was in the Diocese of Canterbury. And then we went to Missions Training College in Hertfordshire for a year, and then went to Ethiopia for 3 years.
For 3 years?
Yes.
Yes.
We were there during the revolution, in Addis Ababa during the revolution, and 60 of the leading people were shot overnight, executed. And during the revolution also my son was born in Addis, which was a bit hairy because there was a curfew on.
So after 3 years in Ethiopia?
We came home, back to Bristol, where we lived for 2 years. And again, by a strange coincidence, David Marsh, who was chair of the parish council, his father had been a previous vicar of that same church where I was, which was a multi-racial church, multi-denominational church.
Yes. Fighting time?
It was yes, in some ways, but it was quite difficult because at that point, economically, Tanzania was rock bottom, and you'd go to the shop, you couldn't find bread, salt, cooking oil, milk. There was virtually nothing in the shops, and so it's quite difficult to get supplies. And
what were your first impressions of Harwell?
well, I was a bit nervous because I'm not particularly scientifically minded, and I sort of had an impression of all these boffins, around the place in Harwell and Chiltern, and discovered that the director of Harwell was a member of the congregation, and I thought, ooh. But somebody fortunately reassured me and said, well, actually human nature is all the same whether you're a scientist or not.
And what did you see as the key challenges and opportunities in coming here?
The parish was very well organised by my predecessor, Norman Russell. The main challenge was trying to engage with the whole community. The other big challenge personally was adjusting from Tanzania, where most people were in survival mode, to high-tech silicon chip Thames Valley kind of, and the contrast. So we'd personally go into supermarkets, and there'd be a choice of 15 different kinds of bread, whereas in Tanzania there was no bread in the shop. We had 2 children by that time. Jenny was I think 13 when we came, and James, our son, was 11.
Right. They settled in okay?
Yes, both of them had been boarding school in Kenya, so we'd been separated from them. That was quite difficult for us and for them.
And how have the challenges developed or altered during your 25 years?
Yeah, it's a long time, isn't it? I think, well, one of the encouragements for me has been seeing people grow into leadership in the church, and several people have gone into the ordained ministry and moved on from here over the years, both from Chiltern and Harwell. What's working well in Chiltern at one point is not working well in Harwell, and vice versa. I think the other big challenge, perhaps, is an increasingly secular society background, and how do you pitch your tent in that environment? As far as Harwell and Chiltern is concerned, I would say the membership has been static, hasn't declined. Well, 8 o'clock services have declined a bit.
And I mean, this presents a financial challenge, doesn't it?
Well, I have to say that both in Chiltern and Harwell we've been fortunate that we have been able to pay our way. We have a membership of 152 in Harwell.
Right.
And 82, I think it is, in Chiltern.
What about the low points of your time here, and any special difficulties?
I think inevitably, you know, when you lose people whom you've got to know and love, it's painful, and walking with them. I can remember one very big funeral we had here, and fortunately, I think it was at 2 o'clock, and I came in here 12 o'clock, and there were flowers around the church and with little tags, and I remember just bursting into tears at the prospect of having to take this funeral, but also of losing a dear friend. So those are tough times.
So low points in that respect very much linked with people.
Yeah. It's seeing people come to faith in Christ, seeing people grow in their faith, seeing people go into ordained ministry or some other ministry and taking on leadership roles. One of the high points was building the church hall. In fact, when I came here on the interview process and looking around, they didn't show me the old church hall.
What about the Alpha programme?
Try and encourage people who are on the fringe or even outside if possible, but sometimes it's new people who have moved into the village. After the last course, 6 people were confirmed. We have what we call a ministry leadership team. It includes, as you say, paid and unpaid, part-time, full-time, male and female. So we have 4 church wardens, that's 2 from each parish. We have a person who's just been, Pam Rolls, who's just been ordained deacon. We have 2 retired clergy, that's Joan Impey and Bruce from Chiltern. We have 1 licensed lay minister. We have 4 people who are given they've got a new title now, it's called Authorisation to Preach. And then we have our church administrator who's working upstairs at the moment, Carolyn, who's brilliant, and then our former church warden, former church administrator, Naomi, who facilitates that group once every 6 weeks.
The two churches together?
Yeah,
yes.
We try and work together. And it's really a visionary group. I think Hilary Crossman, who was very much part of the village when I came, and who built up the Girls' Brigade, so that I think when I came there were 70 girls in the Girls' Brigade. I think in terms of the Scout movement and Brian Zimmerman and the amazing work he's done, Rob Thomas, who's now ordained and is a vicar in Trowbridge, and his wife, who was a teacher up at school, Marilyn Thomas, they gave a significant contribution both to the church and the community. And
if you had a second coming, what would you do differently if you came here?
I think probably I wouldn't be quite so activist. I'd spend some greater time in prayer and reflection. And I wish, I suppose, that I had been more effective in helping people to faith. I think obviously the contact with people at all stages of life and in life events. The big funerals, although I dread them, the being with people in the lowest points of their lives, but then the sort of great weddings, you know, and celebrations are great, and baptisms. I mean, I think when I came, to be honest, sometimes I thought, why are these people coming to bring their children to be baptised and they don't want anything to do with the church, really? I got a different view on that now, and
How different?
I think I want to use the opportunity, share with them the good news of Christ, talk a bit about God, and then it's up to them, really.
And what are the chores that you're looking forward to dropping? Or
The admin,
and preparing the weekly sermon, is that a chore?
it's hard work, and you never think it's good enough. I enjoy doing that, but struggling to find illustrations to make it interesting.
Tell us something about your retirement plans, where you're going, what you most look forward to, and what your family are hoping for.
Well, we're going to retire to Blueberry, to Dibley's, and some people have made a comment about that in terms of being Vicar of Dibley. The challenge is going to be downsizing.
Do you already have the house? Is it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, just bought it this year. I'm going to have to work part-time to pay the mortgage. Looking at the moment for one or two possibilities on the horizon. And hopefully it'll be some kind of ministry, but it may be working in B&Q. We'll see.
Has your wife got a great plan for you?
No, she hasn't. She's been working in Abingdon Museum for several years, and that, of course, is closing in November for refurbishment. So she's losing her job about the same time. So that's going to be a challenge for her as well.
Any plan to revisit Africa?
I would like to. We still have strong contacts, and my wife's Eva's brother lives in Nairobi still, and she's been back on several visits.
You might think it a bit odd that I've asked you nothing about religion.
That's all right.
Would you like to chip in? I mean, you have mentioned faith, the development of faith and things like that.
Yes.
But is there anything that this opportunity offers to put anything on record that you'd like to?
I suppose in a fairly secular and materialistic society, I want to say something that there is more to life than the material and the physical and what we see. And I can't prove the existence of God to you or to anybody else. What I can share with is my own experience of having a living relationship with God, my own experience of coming to faith in Christ when I was at boarding school at the age of 14. It was after a series of talks and that I just felt that I felt the presence of God in a very real way, and found, as I look back on it now, found myself kneeling down by my bed in a dormitory of 13 or 14 boys, and just inviting Christ into my life. And Eva's brother, John, who was also at college, he talked to me one night and told me all the reasons why he thought I ought to be ordained, and I told him all the excuses why reasons. And in the early hours when I'd run out of excuses, he walked out and left me with God. And from that point on, I really wanted to serve God.
Was your father influential at all in this, or neutral?
He never pushed me to be ordained. No, he never suggested it to me. I think it's been a real privilege for Eva and I to live and work in this community over 25 years.
Thank you very much. In hard talk, they always finish by saying, thank you very much.